$247, round trip, Oregon to Porto, Portugal. Say that number out loud. Go on, I'll wait. Now imagine reading that in an email while your porridge goes cold, because that is exactly what happened to me. Not a typo, not a scam, not a cruel prank from the universe, which, at my age, I have learned to expect at least once a week. I stared at that email for so long, my reading glasses nearly fogged up. Then I rang my sister Mare, who has the financial instincts of a very cautious squirrel, and even she said, "Connie, book it before you lose your nerve," which, coming from a woman who once spent 45 minutes deciding between two identical tins of beans, felt significant. So I booked it, 2 weeks in Porto. Solo, January. And I am going to tell you exactly what happened, what it cost, what I loved, what nearly took out my knees, and what I would do differently next time. Because that is the deal I make with you. No vague inspiration, no just follow your dreams, nonsense without mentioning the price of lodging. No pretending budget travel means sleeping in a cupboard and calling a packet of crackers dinner. This was a real trip, a careful trip, a funny trip, a trip that reminded me I'm still very much allowed to have an adventure, even if my knees have since submitted a formal written objection. So if you have ever looked at a travel video and thought, lovely for her, but how much did it actually cost? Stay right where you are. I am going to tell you every euro, every dollar, and a few things I learned the hard way so you don't have to. Right? Let's go back to how this actually happened, because it did not fall out of the sky. Well, the plane did, eventually, but the alert did not set itself. I went to Google Flights. I typed in Portland, because that is my nearest airport. Then I typed in Portugal. Not Porto, Portugal, because I was not trying to be precious about it. I was not saying it must be this exact city, on this exact day, with the moon in the proper position and my scarf matching the airport carpet. No, I was looking for a bargain, and bargains do not like being bossed around. That is one of the first things I have learned about travel deals. If you tell the internet, I must go to this exact place on this exact date, the internet looks at you and says, wonderful. We have one here with no flexibility. Let's charge her accordingly. But if you say, show me Portugal in January, suddenly the whole thing opens up. Different dates, different routes, different prices, different possibilities. So I typed in Portugal. I turned on price tracking. And then I did something very powerful. Nothing. I went on with my life. That is the entire strategy. Write this down, because it is the closest thing I have to a state secret. You do not need a spreadsheet. You do not need a travel agent. You do not need to spend your evenings refreshing flight comparison websites like some sort of anxious airline archaeologist. You set the alert, then you go live your life. This part is important because I am 60-something years old and I have things to do. I have bills to pay, tea to drink, reading glasses to misplace, a dog to disappoint by asking for high fives she has not agreed to provide, and shows to watch that I will not be admitting to in public. You know the ones. 6 weeks went by. 6 weeks during which I lived my life, paid my bills, watched 3 seasons of something I will never name, and did not once seriously think about Porto. And then one Tuesday morning, an ordinary Tuesday, nothing special about it, I had just made porridge, and the email arrived. $247, round trip, Portland to Porto. I stared at it. Then I stared at it again. Because at a certain age, you do not trust an airline email immediately. You look for the trap. You look for the missing return flight. You look for the part where it says you have to sit in the cargo hold with someone's emotional support ferret. But no, it was real. $247, round trip. Now I had 48 hours to decide, which, for me, is practically impulsive. I'm not usually a woman who makes large decisions quickly. I can stand in a shop holding 2 kinds of soup for a length of time that would concern management, but this felt different. This was the kind of price that does not sit around waiting for you to become emotionally prepared. So I booked it. 2 weeks. That was important. I was not running away to Portugal for 3 months to start wearing linen and pretending I owned a vineyard. It was 2 weeks. Long enough to feel like a real adventure. Short enough that my bank account did not require smelling salts. And honestly, 2 weeks felt just right. Enough time to wander. Enough time to eat. Enough time to get lost and pretend I meant to go that way. Enough time to recover from the hills. We'll get to the hills. Oh, we will get to the hills. And still short enough to come home before my houseplants filed a complaint. Now, I want to talk about January because I know exactly what some of you are thinking. Oh, Connie, January. Isn't that very cold and very wet and very grim? And I need you to hear me very clearly when I say this. Compared to January in Cork, Portugal in winter is basically the Canary Islands. Porto in January is cool. You will want a coat. You will want a scarf. You may want a small umbrella, though apparently I bring the wrong umbrella to every city I visit, so do not use me as your umbrella consultant. But you will not need thermal underwear, a survival kit, or the psychological resilience required to face a Tuesday in the west of Ireland in February. It is fine. More than fine. And here's what January in Porto gives you that July absolutely does not. Room to walk, room to sit, room to look at the river without 27 people trying to take the same photo around your left ear. The restaurants are open, the cafes are warm, the streets are breathable. The people serving you are not looking at you like you are the 400th tourist they have seen that week, even if you are wearing the expression of someone trying to decode a bus map. There are no enormous queues, no sweating in a crowd outside a viewpoint, no paying €14 for a mediocre sandwich because every good place has a 2-hour wait, no pretending you are enjoying yourself while standing shoulder to shoulder with strangers who are also pretending they are enjoying themselves. January is quieter. January is cheaper. January gives you room to notice things. The tiles, the river, the little cafes, the way the city looks when it is not performing for summer crowds. That is what I wanted. Not a perfect postcard, a real trip. A 2-week trip I could actually afford, and that, right there, is why January worked. January was not a compromise. January was the secret. January was the move. Now, let's be honest about the flight, because I promised you honesty, and I intend to deliver it whether it flatters me or not. $247 round trip is real. That is what I paid. But I want to be straight with you about what $247 looks like in practice. Because some of you may be picturing yourself reclining in business class with a warm towel and a glass of something sparkling. I need to gently correct that image. It was a connecting flight. Portland, then a layover, somewhere sensible in Europe, then into Porto, not non-stop. You are absolutely not getting non-stop Portland to Porto for $247 unless someone at the airline is having a very bad day and you happen to be watching. The layover was a few hours. I had a book. I had a coffee that cost more than my bica would cost me all week in Porto, and I survived. I did not upgrade. I did not pay extra for a seat assignment, which meant I got a middle seat on the transatlantic leg. I was sandwiched between a gentleman who snored like a diesel engine and a teenager who watched something on his laptop without headphones. I mention this not to complain, but to be transparent about the full $247 experience. You can pay extra for a better seat. I chose not to. I also chose to bring earplugs. At this point in my life, earplugs are not optional travel equipment. They are peacekeeping devices. I brought a carry-on and a personal item. 2 weeks, 1 carry-on. This is achievable. This is not impressive discipline. No. This is simply a woman who has learned that checking a bag adds time, money, and an entirely unnecessary level of suspense to the arrival's experience. There are few things more humbling than standing at a baggage carousel, watching everyone else collect their suitcase, while yours appears to be taking a separate holiday. So I packed light, layers, comfortable clothes, shoes that already knew me, not shoes I was trying to break in, because I am not interested in being betrayed by footwear on another continent. I packed what I needed and left the fantasy version of myself at home. You know that version. The woman who thinks she will wear elegant outfits every evening, write in a travel journal by candlelight, and somehow not spill coffee on herself. Lovely woman, completely fictional. Real Connie packed layers, good socks, and a scarf that could make the same outfit look like I had made an effort. That is enough. Now, travel insurance. Here it comes. Some of you are going to want me to tell you I got travel insurance. The sensible, responsible, grown woman thing to do. and I will tell you that I did not get travel insurance. I thought about it for approximately 4 minutes, decided that $43 was €43 worth of wine in Porto, and moved on. I accept full responsibility for this. The cobblestones and I ultimately reached a respectful understanding, and nothing seriously wrong happened. But I am not recommending my approach. I'm simply being honest about it, because that is the whole point of sitting here with you. If you are the kind of person who sleeps better with insurance, get the insurance. If you are the kind of person like me, you may decide differently. Either way, do not let the internet shame you into pretending you are more sensible than you actually are. Just know yourself, know your risk, know your needs, and make your decision. When I arrived in Porto, the first thing that hit me was not the architecture. It was the light. Winter light in Porto has this soft, low, golden quality that makes old buildings look like they are keeping secrets. The second thing that hit me was the hills. I told you we would get to the hills, because Porto is not shy about them. Porto is a walkable city, beautiful, compact, everything you want from a place you are spending 2 weeks in. It also has hills. I need you to understand the hills. The hills need you to understand the hills. Not in a discouraging way, in a this is important information way. The way a good friend would tell you before you arrived, wearing the wrong shoes and a hopeful attitude. The Ribeira sits at river level, which is lovely, and approximately everything you want to see is up. Sometimes slightly up, sometimes considerably up. Sometimes you look at the stairs ahead of you and have a quiet word with yourself about your life choices. The hills in Porto are not hills in the gentle, rolling Irish countryside sense. No, they are steep, cobbled, occasionally vertiginous, and the locals navigate them at a pace I can only describe as aggressive. I watched a woman in heels, actual heels, walk up a gradient that had me gripping a railing, and she was on her phone, not even looking up. I do not know what they are putting in the coffee, but I suspect it is structural. Now I am a reasonably fit woman. I walk regularly, and even I found myself, on day 3, coming up from the riverfront after lunch, stopping on a landing, pretending to look at a very interesting tile on the wall, and breathing in a way I would prefer not to document further. The tile was fine, by the way. Not that interesting. The good news, and there is genuinely excellent news here, is that Porto built solutions to this problem. Because Porto is a sensible city run by people who understood that not everyone has the calves of a mountain goat. There are vintage trams, there are funiculars, there is the Elevador dos Guindais, which drops you from the upper city down to the riverside. And that, to me, is one of the small, perfect pleasures of being a human person in Porto. I took it every single time it was available to me. 0 apologies, none, not one. And then there are the tuks. Oh, the tuks. Porto has a significant tuk culture. Little 3-wheeled electric vehicles, open-sided, carrying tourists around the city on sightseeing tours. In theory, charming. In practice, and I say this with complete respect for the drivers, who are skilled beyond what I can fully account for, they treat the narrow, cobbled, steep streets of Porto as a personal racetrack. I had my first tuk encounter on day 2. I was coming around a corner in the Ribeira, a corner that, I want to emphasize, was approximately the width of a standard doorframe, and a tuk appeared from the opposite direction, at a speed I would describe as optimistic. The driver gave me a cheerful wave. I gave him approximately 4 inches of pavement, and the expression of a woman reconsidering several decisions. He was gone before I could finish the thought. By day 5, I had developed what I can only call tuk awareness, a kind of 6th sense, a slight tightening of the shoulders when turning any corner that slopes downward in curves. You learn to hug the wall. You learn to listen for the low electric hum. You learn that on a steep cobble lane with buildings on both sides, and a tuk coming toward you at pace, the correct response is to step into the nearest doorway and wait for the situation to resolve itself. I was not hit by a tuk. I consider this an achievement, and I am including it, proudly, right at the top of my list of things that went well.